Most people walk into a room trying to earn their place in it. That single instinct is why they never fully get one. What you are about to hear is not about confidence. It is about something older, quieter, and far more precise. Why the room decides before you speak. There is a calculation that happens the moment you enter a space. Not after introductions. Not after you demonstrate competence or charm or whatever it is you have prepared. The moment you cross the threshold. And by the time anyone in that room could consciously describe what they observed, the decision has already been made. This is not intuition in the mystical sense. It is pattern recognition running faster than language. The human nervous system evolved to assess threat, status, and alliance before verbal communication was even possible. That system did not disappear when we moved into offices and boardrooms. It runs underneath every professional interaction you have ever had, and it is almost certainly running right now in every room you enter. What it is reading is not your resume, not your title, not your carefully chosen words. It is reading your relationship to the space itself. Think about the last time you walked into a room where you felt genuinely out of place. Not because anyone said anything. Not because of a visible social signal. Something in the air. A slight adjustment in how you held your body. A fraction of a second where you scanned for where you were supposed to go, instead of simply going. That fraction of a second is visible. Not consciously, to most people. But it registers. Now reverse it. Think about someone you have observed who enters a space, and something shifts. Not dramatically. Nothing you could put into a performance review. But the room reorganizes slightly. Attention moves without anyone deciding to move it. That person did not announce themselves. They did not demand acknowledgement. They simply did not need it. The Stoics had a concept worth examining here. Not as philosophy, but as behavioral technology. The idea that a man whose stability depended on external conditions had no real stability at all. That what you depend on for your sense of footing is precisely what others can remove. Apply that to any professional room you walk into. If your sense of belonging in that space depends on someone validating it, you have handed the room a lever. Most people hand over that lever before the conversation starts. Have you ever noticed a room where you felt no need to earn anything? What was different about that one? How the bid for respect destroys the thing it chases. Here is the mechanism that almost no one talks about directly, even though every socially aware person has felt it operate on them. The visible pursuit of respect produces the opposite of respect. Not because people are cruel. Not because the person seeking it is undeserving. Because the pursuit itself is a signal. It tells every room you enter, before a single word is spoken, that the thing you are chasing has not yet arrived. And rooms respond to that signal with something that looks like indifference, but functions more like a category assignment. You get placed in the group of people still trying. Watch it operate in any high-stakes environment. The person who over-explains their credentials during an introduction. The one who laughs slightly before the joke lands, signaling they are monitoring the room for approval. The one who agrees before they have fully processed what was said, because agreement feels safer than the pause it would take to actually think. None of these are dramatic failures. Individually, they are barely noticeable. Cumulatively, they build a profile, and the profile is, this person needs something from this room. The behavioral principle at work here is almost mechanical. Status in a group is not assigned based on what you claim. It is assigned based on what you appear to need. The person who appears to need the least from the group is consistently read as the one the group should orient toward. Across cultures and historical periods, the pattern appears with enough consistency to suggest it is not coincidental. What changes is the surface. The underlying dynamic does not. So what does this mean practically? It means the adjustment most people make before entering a high-stakes room, the mental rehearsal, the confidence pep talk, the preparation of the right things to say, may solving the wrong problem entirely. The problem is not what you say. The problem is what you are trying to get. Has this ever shown up in your own life? A room where you walked in wanting something and could feel that want working against you? Drop it in the comments. Specific situations, not general feelings. The pattern in those stories is what this channel is built to name. What presence actually is, and why it cannot be performed, This is where most content on this subject fails in a specific and repeatable way. It offers techniques, eye contact ratios, posture corrections, the precise angle of a handshake, voice modulation exercises that promise to make you sound more authoritative in 30 days. And some of those things are not wrong exactly. They are just solving a surface problem while leaving the structural problem completely intact. You can train the external signals of presence without ever developing the internal condition that makes those signals real. And when you do that, you create something the room cannot quite name, but consistently detects. The technical word for it is incongruence. The behavioral read is simpler. Something is off. Genuine presence is not a collection of behaviors. It is what remains when the need to perform has been removed. And the only way to remove that need is to resolve whatever created it, not to layer practice behaviors over it. There is a concept embedded in samurai tradition that most Western interpretations romanticize into uselessness. Mushin, often translated as no mind. Not the absence of thought, but the absence of interference. The state in which the body executes without the mind interrupting to check whether the execution is being observed correctly. Applied to any modern room you walk into, the person operating from that state is not thinking about how they are coming across. They are simply there, fully occupied by the space, the people, the actual content of what is happening. And that quality of attention, that absence of self-monitoring, what the room experiences as gravity, it is not charisma. Charisma can be performed. This cannot. Here is the counterintuitive part. The less you do, in most high-stakes social situations, the more space you occupy. Not because silence is inherently powerful, because most people are filling silence with noise that signals discomfort, and the absence of that noise reads as something else entirely. What you choose not to do in a room communicates a complete sentence. Most people never learn to write that sentence deliberately. If this reframe is shifting something for you, hit the like. Because the next part is where the real mechanism lives, and you will want the frame we just built to read it clearly. The thing the room actually reads. Stop. Before the next idea lands, sit with a question. Think of someone you instinctively took seriously the first time you met them. Not because of a title, not because someone told you to. Something immediate. Something that registered before you had language for it. What were they doing? Probably not much. That is the answer most people miss. Because we are trained to look for the active ingredient, the specific behavior, the technique that explains the effect. And in this case, the active ingredient is almost entirely an absence of need, not coldness, not arrogance, not manufactured distance. The specific, quiet quality of a person who is not running a calculation about what this room owes them. You can feel the difference. You have felt it. The person who enters a space and immediately begins orienting toward approval produces a specific sensation in the people around them. Not disrespect, exactly. Something closer to indifference. The room does not rise to meet them because there is nothing pulling it to. Now think of the opposite. The person who enters and does not scan for approval, who sits without negotiating their right to sit, who speaks when something is worth saying and does not fill the space between those moments. That person produces a different sensation. Not because they performed anything, because they subtracted something. The room does not know why it is paying attention. It just is. This is the mechanism underneath everything discussed in this video. Not presence as addition, presence as subtraction. The removal of the signals that tell every room you walk into that you are still waiting for permission to be there. You either carry that permission in with you, or you spend the entire interaction looking for it. The room knows which one is happening. Before you say a word, before you decide to be strategic about it, it already knows. And the strangest part of all of this is that the moment you stop needing the room to give you something, the room tends to offer it anyway. Why this extends far beyond any single room. Everything covered here could be read as tactical, a set of insights for specific high-stakes situations. Job interviews, first meetings, rooms where the outcome matters and you want to walk in with every advantage available. But if that is the only frame you apply, you are leaving the most significant part unused. Because the room that reads you most accurately is not the one you prepared for. It is the one you walk into without thinking. The recurring ones. The people who see you across time, across contexts, across the moments when no outcome is at stake and you have no particular reason to manage anything. Those are the rooms that build or erode the thing that no single high-stakes meeting can create. Reputation is not manufactured in impressive moments. It is revealed in ordinary ones. And what it reveals, consistently and without mercy, is the gap between who you are when you are performing and who you are when no one is watching the performance. That gap is what people feel in you before they can name it. Some call it authenticity. Some call it integrity. In behavioral terms, it is simply consistency under varying conditions of observation. You cannot train that gap away. You can only close it. And closing it is not a behavioral adjustment. It is a longer, quieter project than any technique promises. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, writing with no intention of being read, described the practice of returning, repeatedly, to the question of what he actually was when removed from the role he occupied, not what he projected. What remained? He seemed to understand that the answer to that question, refined over time, was the only thing that could not be taken from him by circumstance. That project does not begin in the room. It begins before it. If this reached something real for you, subscribe and turn on notifications. Not as a favor, because this channel will keep returning to exactly this territory, from angles that most places will not go near. One question before you close this. Think of a room where you consistently feel most like yourself. Not performing, managing, just present. What is it about that room that removes the need to prove anything? Leave that answer below. It is more diagnostic than it appears, and what it points to will come up again in the next video. The next time you enter any room where something is at stake, do one thing before you speak. Let someone else fill the first silence. Not as a power move, not as a technique, simply as an experiment in noticing what happens when you subtract the urgency to establish yourself immediately. Observe how the room responds to your stillness. One room, one silence. The data you collect from that single experiment is worth more than any amount of preparation that went before it. This content examines behavioral psychology and practical philosophy for educational purposes. References to patterns of human behavior are presented as observational frameworks, not as prescriptions or verified scientific conclusions.